XCOM 2 is a pretty damn good game for XCOM standards. And for this video, I'm going to be using some footage from Northern Lion's video. Just little clips of him saying certain things that I'll come back to later, as we will compare the things that he says to an incident that happened a while back with Shadows of Mordor. But for now, let's get on with the video! So this is kind of a hard one to review, as really XCOM is pretty much in a genre of its own from what I have seen of this type of game. My only real comparison is that one Halo game which I can't remember the name of. I want to say ODST, but it might have been Reach. Not sure. Not that I'm much of an Xbox fan. All I know is they make really nice controllers that work on PC. But yeah, I mean, there are games like Risk or Europa Universalis, but that's controlling whole armies, not 6 people, in what I would describe as a chess game. So really, from my time with the genre, I can only compare it to XCOM 1 and that one Halo game. Either way, let's get into it. So, XCOM 2 is a sequel to the immensely popular PC game of XCOM and its various titles of Enemy Within, Enemy Unknown, and The Long War. With it being set in an alternate timeline where the XCOM project failed and the aliens took over the Earth, and it now falls on the remaining XCOM base to gather a resistance and defeat the aliens before they finish the Avatar project and screw us over even more. So, as for the story, just mentioned, it's pretty straightforward, and it was certainly a good idea to set it in an alternate timeline, as there is so much more you can do with it, as if it was just a straight sequel, the only thing you could have really done is have a few different alien races like the Vipers invade, but that's really it, and it would have been all the same basic Earth maps. Whereas with this timeline, there is more room for creativity, as now the aliens are in control and they are going to build their kinds of bases. So you now have new maps that you can be more creative with by adding strange alien bases and structures and landscapes onto the now converted Earth. So the story is great for this reason, and it is also just nice and simple. Take the planet back from the aliens and make sure that they don't finish that Avatar project while running around these new creative landscapes. But what is some nice new landscapes without anything to go into them? So let's move on to the gameplay. For the most part, it's the same as XCOM 1, so veteran players will have a handle on things right off the bat. That is, you control a squad of 4 that eventually becomes 6 once you get the upgrades, and when on a map you can move them from place to place and use an action like medkits or overwatches and such in order to kill the enemies and reach your objective, with the base being basically a shop where you can buy new, more powerful weapons, research new things to buy later, train new recruits, and all of the other stuff that you would do in the base. Fairly standard so far. However, not only is everything about the game now been completely polished and updated for its newest installment, but the new mechanics have been added on top of it to change up the XCOM game and add a new layer of strategy. So for the actual polished thing, in the old game, there was times where you could abuse the buggy cursor to your advantage, like throwing grenades into areas you're not supposed to for kills that you otherwise would not normally be able to get, and so forth. Whereas here, all them bugs have been ironed out. That wall is a wall, and you're not going to find that 1 pixel that will make the grenade go through the wall. It makes the game feel vastly superior to the original. Then, for the new stuff in terms of the field game itself, there is a ton of new stuff. There is a new ranger class that can run up and hit stuff with a sword, drones that can provide air support to other members of the team, from healing to a one-turn shield to hacking towers that can reduce enemy will. There is now new weapon mods, small combat stims, new abilities where your team can rank up, like this unit that never triggers overwatches. It adds many new layers of strategy to the game, like deciding when it's a good time to hack stuff, the best way to use the drone, be it an extra attack or a shield for a team for that one turn, because you might think, oh, there's a good chance I can hack that, but your team member might be out in the fray of it and it's like, maybe I should give him a shield for one turn so that he doesn't die, because there's a good chance he might get shot from 3 enemies rather than the 2 that I can see. So for any returning XCOM players, this is fantastic, as to them it's a new way to play and a new level of challenge. However, even with the tutorial, new players might have a hard time, even a bad time, as all this extra strategy is a lot to take in for a newcomer, and when you combine all the new mechanics that you have to learn with all the old stuff that we already know but they don't, they might have a pretty bad time because it might be just way too much to take in. It is clear that XCOM 2 was made solely for returning XCOM players. This is not a game for newcomers. And it's obvious that the developers want you to play XCOM 1 for a while to learn and master all of the basics before you come into this game where they add the advanced mechanics like the drones, new abilities and new classes. And wrapping this up with the difficulty to further state my point, it has 2 modes like normal, then being normal and classic, and they are both harder than XCOM 1. I feel like classic mode in XCOM 2 is equal to that of classic mode in XCOM 1, but with Long War activated to make everything twice as hard. And playing on classic in XCOM 2, if you're not that good, is going to get your ass pasted up and down the corridor quite a few times before you adjust to its difficulty setting. And normal, while as balanced as it was in the original, with all of the new mechanics, is still somewhat of a challenge, but you do have the liberty of save stating if shit goes wrong. So for new players, I would recommend going and playing XCOM 1 first to learn the basics, then come into XCOM 2. But beyond that, there's not much else to say. The graphics have had a major update and it looks so much more polished, which is to be expected. The music is just as good as it was in the first game, and the customization area has had a lot of new features added to the level of New Vegas, so you can pretty much create any character you want. So that's about it, but let's end off with something that 2K was doing. So I want to use 2 voice clips from NL's video, as he was more in with 2K and got the game early. I would, but he pulled one of his classic egg moves, as the clip I wanted to use was in his pre-release footage in episode 7, and now he's playing the game through normally now that it's out, but rather than doing what he said and starting over and just uploading it, he has started over, yes, but he has changed all of the video files from the pre-release footage to the new game footage. So you can see here is a episode 8 at 24 minutes, but then on his page is the same episode 8, but at 29 minutes. And clicking on one of them will take you to a page that basically says this video doesn't exist. Well, now you just made me look bad, you ditzy egg. But this is why we love you. So, instead, I'll just relay the information to you all.
It's starting a little weird here because it's still pre-release. I'm not supposed to show the very, very first mission of the game.
So during NL's pre-release, he was skipping missions and stated at one point he has a notepad that 2K give him of missions he was not allowed to show and things he was not allowed to do, which is a bit sketchy, 2K, as Shadows of Mordor tried to censor content like that, and look how well it turned out for them. Some things like the Black Site mission I get, as it has story in, but one of the things that all of the people that got it on early access were not allowed to show off was the tutorial level? What? Why? From a story perspective? Not really. I mean, it has the opening cutscene of aliens have taken over the world after XCOM failed, but everyone already knew that from your store page. So why were you stopping everyone that had it through early access from showing the tutorial level? If anything, that's the level you should want to show off the most, as it's right at the beginning of the game, so there is no real spoilers, and it's the one where you learn everything. So for someone new to XCOM, this would be the perfect level for your early Let's Players to show off, as it explains all of the new mechanics, and you have a second voice giving commentary to further help the newcomers understand the examples. Like, for example, use your drone to hack that tower over there is the instruction, but then have Northern Lion or your early access player add, okay, so by pressing this command we get taken into this hack screen with different percentages. So what was the deal with that, Mr. XCOM development team? As when we see early access players skipping levels because you're telling them to, it sends a bad message. Like with Shadows of Mordor, people don't question why you're hiding it, like, oh, it has story, for example, but more rather ask the question of, what are you trying to hide? What buggy, broken mess don't you want us to see? Northern Lion did a great job at handling this, saying things like the Black Saint mission has story in it, and they told him not to do any story missions as they want you to see the story for yourself, which I get. But then he never gave a reason for skipping the tutorial, or why he never went to 2 certain areas of the base. And I've played it, and as said, there is nothing spoilery in them areas. The tutorial is created really well for both returning and new players, so I don't get why them areas, especially the tutorial, was like, don't show this shit, when it's the perfect level to introduce new players to how the game works. So, something to keep in mind, developers, for the future. Censor as little as possible, because the more you censor, the more flags you raise, like early access Shadows of Mordor did. But with that being said, let's move on to the final verdict. So, my final verdict for XCOM 2 is a damn good 4 out of 5. XCOM 2 is the perfect example of how a sequel should be done. Keep the original core concept and mechanics, but polish it all up. XCOM 1 had a great core, but it was a bit buggy with the you can get a grenade to go through a wall and stuff, and the graphics were a bit bad and the animations were a bit janky, but all the elements are there, so let's not mess with the core, but instead just polish it all up. The graphics are now a lot more high-res and closer to the AAA you would come to expect today, with some stunning shaders that give the alien skin a shimmering look like they're covered in water or slime, or making the mech metal really shine. Updated. The music fits the places you are in a lot better. Rather than the generic mission music, generic bass music, there are now a variety of different tracks for missions that fit whatever environment or mission you are doing. Updated. The story. While XCOM 1 was just kill the Exalt, kill the aliens and win, there is now more of a story, like with the Avatar project, and all of the cutscenes have been updated again to look more modern and less janky. Updated. And the core mechanics and customization, again, nice and updated, with all the old mechanics still there, but polished out, like the bugs where the grenade goes through the wall, ironed out, gone. And the new mechanics, like the drones, add a new layer of strategy to the mix, while keeping all of the old stuff that made XCOM 1 so likeable to begin with. Updated. I want this to be a lesson to all developers, especially you, Sonic Team. If you're going to make a sequel to anything, take XCOM 2 as your example. If it's a great core, don't mess with it. Just see what its flaws were and improve upon it, and your sequel will turn out better. Sonic Team, for example. The Adventure series was fine with playing as the different characters, but no time for that, as we need to scrap that for the Heroes Triple Team thing. Then they went through their bad spot. But then Sonic Colors came out. It was okay. It was not good, but it was okay. Use that as your core and build on the idea. But no time for that, as it's now Generations. Okay, well this is good, build on that. Sorry, can't do that. We threw that core out for Sonic Lost Worlds. Okay then, well, that one is really good. It's bright and colourful like the original. It has a very appealing art style. The gameplay is fantastic with that fast pace you would expect from Sonic, proceeding in a forward motion at a quick speed with the cylindrical level design still giving you that 3D feel. It's not perfect, but it's one of the best Sonic games. Make a Lost Worlds 2. Do an XCOM and use this as your core and build on this. But no, gotta throw that out for Sonic Boom, which fucked it all up and has pretty much killed Sonic off. So, AAA and indie developers, take note of this. If you have a good idea for a first game, and it comes out kind of bad, but it has potential, don't just throw it out. Take what you have, and then do an XCOM 2 and just improve it all. Or, if this is like your fourth game, then do a Zelda. Keep the core of Link gets Master Sword kills Ganon, but experiment with the formula, like have one set in an ocean like Wind Waker, or one after your hero dies, like in the best Zelda game ever made. So, good job, XCOM 2. You made a great, more polished sequel and have set an example for how sequels should be done. Unlike Five Nights at Freddy's, that shat out exactly the same game 4 times in a row without changing anything.